Alright, got another Waggle Talks at You from his hideout video. This time I'm going to be covering the crafting of the gear that I am using on my Bane Occultist character in Hardcore Archnemesis, and just going over the methods I used to craft my items, seeing as just about every slot other than my weapon, which I ended up just buying one and kind of going from there. Every other slot I either crafted myself or was attempting to craft myself and then found a better option elsewhere. But it's all pretty solidly craftable stuff, and it was mostly done with like essences and other resources I had farmed myself, which makes it at least somewhat SSF friendly to attempt most of these things, which is pretty cool, I think. So I will just go piece by piece here. I'll get some timestamps set up for each individual slot, and yeah. So starting off, we'll go top to bottom. Start with the helmet. The helmet. The goal of this item for this character specifically is the mana reservation efficiency roll, which you can see on it as a suffix. That's from essences. It's specifically Essence of Loathing. And in my case, for this character, I specifically wanted to use the max rank Deafening Essences to get the highest roll possible there. And seeing as that's the main focus of that slot, is that mana reservation. Anything else, kind of just looking for a good item. I definitely lucked out a bit. I happened to just hit a helmet while using the essence that has tier 1 life and had a it's only tier 3 but had a spell suppression roll, which are really good, and they're kind of annoying to come by because unlike most other things, they're pretty hard to like actually force onto an item. But realistically, you're probably not going to see spell suppression happen alongside unless you're just throwing lots of essences in for no real reason, and you can get spell suppression elsewhere. You don't need it on the helmet necessarily. But so again, you need the Deafening of Essence mod, so you have to use Deafening Essence of Loathing, or Essence of Loathing in general, I would recommend for this character. Deafening Essences, and then you're just kind of looking for stuff that doesn't seem bad. Either like a full set of solid suffixes, like if you hit 2 resistances, then that's good. If you hit like a decent life roll, and maybe 1 good suffix and 1 open suffix, I think this helmet, when I crafted it initially, actually had an open suffix that I either used one of the Eldritch Exalted Orbs, or maybe I used a Leo bench in Betrayal. I don't remember exactly what I used, but I ended up slamming on the cold res after the fact. The one other kind of like key thing is having an open prefix. Whatever you roll, you want an open prefix to craft the Fizz taken as fire, because that's one of this character's limited sources of physical damage mitigation. And then from there, all these items that have the new influence implicits, you kind of just worry about those after the fact and just reroll until you get what you want. But so this is the first of a few items where if you hit the suffixes first, you can utilize these new influences heavily to your advantage. So like, let's say I had gotten this helmet and it had the reservation, it had the spell suppression, it had the cold res. It has those 3 suffixes, but it doesn't have good prefixes. What I would do in that case is I would turn to these currencies down here. Eldritch Chaos Orb, which says if Searing Exarch is dominant, reroll prefix modifiers. And so if the helmet doesn't have any influence yet, I would just use like a bottom tier Ember. Maybe if it has a low tier Eater of Worlds mod already, I'd have to use like a rank 2 to just make it so the Exarch one is dominant. And then I can just use Eldritch Chaos Orbs. Now, one quirk to these Eldritch Chaos Orbs is, unlike a lot of other reroll, reforge type currencies, it will always give you the exact same amount of mods that it had to begin with. So if it's re-rolling prefixes and the helmet already has 2 prefixes, it will re-roll with 2 prefixes. If it has 3, if it's full, all 3, it will always re-roll all 3 full again. Now I'm not 100% sure if mathematically you're better off with rolling just with 2 prefixes, because that guarantees you have an open prefix, or alternatively 3 prefixes and then just gambling on when you hit something decent you would use an annulment orb to get rid of one of the less desirable mods. Either way, one thing you can do is, like, if the helmet only had 1 prefix, you can actually just do a bench crafted prefix. If it had 1 actual prefix and then you bench craft and you use this, it counts as 2. If it has 2 actual prefixes and you bench craft a third, it counts as 3. So you can bump the number up if you need to. But that's how you would do it if you get the suffixes first and the prefix, and like that whole thing pretty much applies to any of these helmet, body armor, gloves, boots that use the new influences. If you get either the prefixes done or the suffixes done, I think in most cases here it's like more likely that you're going to get the suffixes done first. You can manipulate the influences, use the Eldritch Chaos Orbs, use the Eldritch Exalted and Annulment Orbs to kind of finish off the other side safely. So next up would be the body armor, which the body armor is pretty straightforward. It's not really needing anything in particular too crazy, so it's just a good slot to use for just general stats. In this case, I used it to get a big spell suppression roll, and the way I went about it was using Essences of Greed, which just guarantee a life roll, high tier life roll. And if you've been doing just a good amount of mapping this league, or if you just want to buy some, but I just was doing a lot of mapping with Essence passives on my Atlas, so I just had a bunch ready. You just spam. I just spammed and spammed and spammed Essences of Greed until I hit spell suppression. And once I got spell suppression, I think the first time it had like life regen and some other bad suffix. So I got the Eldritch stuff set up to manipulate suffixes, tried to use an Eldritch annulment, and unfortunately annulled off the spell suppression. And then some more Essences of Greed later, got another good spell suppression roll, got a good resist roll, and then Eldritch exalted the final lightning resist roll onto it. And so it was a good item at that point. It's basically done. The only other thing is open prefix or max life as extra max ES craft. Now, an alternative way to do this to Essences of Greed would be to use any of the 3 resistance essences, anger, wrath, hatred, and just using those, you're guaranteeing 1 good suffix resist, and then you would be again fishing for spell suppression, but in this case you're working under the assumption that you're going to get your 3 suffixes done and then go back to the Eldritch Chaos Orbs and re-rolling the prefixes specifically to do the prefixes second. And again, you would still need that 1 open prefix at the end for the benchcraft. But the body armor is pretty straightforward overall. Gloves. There's kind of 2 ways to go about the gloves. I have much more recently finally gotten the kind of more min-maxed, what I would say, version. But assuming you don't have a pair of fractured spell suppression gloves available to you, you're kind of just looking for a life roll and probably some amount of spell suppression and resists. And so basically everything I just said about the body armor crafting, apply it to the gloves. You are going to use Essences of Greed, or you're going to use resist essences, and you're just looking for a spell suppression roll, and then finishing up from there, and again, open prefix or benchcraft. Now, if you can get your hands on a solid pair of spell suppression fractured gloves, which this has what, tier 3, so it's not the highest tier, but high enough. And you want to min-max for this Bane character, you take that spell suppression roll and you start throwing in essences of delirium instead, which gives you the socketed dot multi. You could do essence of delirium without fractured gloves, but the odds of hitting spell suppression when using these essences and how much they cost and just how, like, it's just gonna burn through tons of currency if you're in Trade League, and if you're in SSF, you're not gonna have enough Essence of Delirium. But so you use Essence of Delirium, spell suppression's guaranteed, and then either you hit a third suffix or there is no third suffix. If there's no third suffix, you set up the gloves to Eldritch Exalt the third suffix. If the third suffix is bad, you Eldritch Annulment Orb, and you have a 50-50 chance of either removing the Delirium mod or the bad suffix, because it can't remove the spell suppression. Repeat, repeat, until you get 3 good suffixes, and then switch the dominant influence over to Exarch, and again, Eldritch Chaos Orbs, while you search for a good life roll. You can go one step further on this as well, by if you want just maximum damage, either before, probably after getting a life roll of some sort. You could do it before even, but you would lock suffixes with the benchcraft, and then either if you have a good life roll, you would use the rank 4 Ashling bench, or if you don't have any good prefixes yet, you could probably just Veiled Chaos Orbit. And try to get the unveiled version of the plus AoE gems craft, because the unveiled version has +2 to gem level instead of +1, so it would be more damage, but it becomes considerably harder to get that alongside like a high tier life roll. And that's the gloves. The spell suppression implicit from Eater of Worlds influence is a good way to finish up, top off your spell suppression if you are a little bit low elsewhere. I think because this fractured pair had less spell suppression than my previous pair of gloves did, I had to use the implicit to make sure I stayed at full 100% suppression chance. But just something to keep in mind, it goes from like 7% at the lowest to I think probably like 11 or 12% at the absolute highest, which wouldn't really be worth it, but you're probably getting a solid 7 or 8% there if you need it from the implicit, which is pretty good. Boots, the final item using the new influences. You could do this similarly to the body armor and the gloves with like essences of greed, and then just hoping for suffixes and then doing the prefix stuff. But this is one where I would actually recommend first just using resist essences. You could even use chaos resist essences, but I think you want to get the suffixes first here. Just get 3 solid resistances or 2 resistances in the spell suppression roll. If you hit a spell suppression roll with good resistances, that's even better. That's great. But either way, just 3 good suffixes, and then I think my pair just happened to hit a really good life roll. And so I just rolled with it and bench crafted the movement speed onslaught. Alternatively, what you can do is, again, if you don't have a good life roll, you could lock the suffixes in either Veiled Chaos or Ashling bench to get an unveiled prefix, which the unveiled prefix is almost guaranteed to give you a 30% movement speed roll with boots. It's like an extremely high chance. Though for me specifically, I would have wanted only the movement speed onslaught roll. I wouldn't have cared about any of the other movement speed prefixes. There's like 3 of them or 4, I don't remember exactly. So it would probably take a few tries, but that would get another 10% movement speed. And then you could you probably would just benchcraft life at that point. And so it would be trading off like 20 flat life for 10% movement speed, which is a good trade-off. The 10% movement speed is really good, but I just kind of stuck with what I got because I hit a really nice pair and said, okay, good enough for me. And then one thing to note on this one is this has +2 max fire res, which is rank 5 out of rank 6 being the highest on the implicit. getting high rank implicits with these influences kind of sucks. It's rough. Using the high ranked currencies like the high ranked embers, um, they're very low supply. On hardcore trade, they're very expensive. You need to use a lot of them to hit the mod you want. What I did, and would probably just recommend instead, is I used like the graders, which is just rank 2, and they're a lot more accessible. I just used this until I hit fire resist, and then used the orbs of conflict, I believe, the ones that can raise and lower the ranks, and just basically gambled the coin toss over and over and over on those until I ended up at a net +3 to get it to rank 5. And that was actually just cheaper and faster than trying to get together like 50 to 100 rank 4 exceptional embers that who knows how much that would have cost, and if I could have even found enough people selling them. But the orbs of conflict seem to be pretty common. They're pretty cheap, at least at the moment. I think because most of the implicits don't actually gain a ton from getting to the higher ranks. Something like max resist is an exception, because going from that +1 to +2 is a pretty big deal. But yeah, orbs of conflict are your friend. Forget using those high rank embers or ikers. They're not fun. All right. Moving on, belt. For this character in particular, I kind of need 2 items with strength on them. You could use a heavy belt to make it only 1 item, but I'm trying to min-max. So I said Stygian belt with strength roll. This one's actually not too... It's pretty straightforward to roll, but it can get kind of pricey. First thing, jewelry slots, use your catalyst before you roll them, so that you don't have to use 20 instead of 4. And then in this one, just strength essences. Just strength essences. And do that until... Basically until you hit good life was what I was going for, and then hopefully a good resist. If you had an open suffix, or like 2 open suffixes, I guess, you could maybe use like a Leo slam for another resist, but more realistically, you're probably hitting strength essences until you get good life, a good resist, and then either another good resist or an open suffix. In this case, it just had an open suffix. And then you're maybe done. If you have an open prefix, though, after that, you can use a Hunter Exalt. So this whole time I was crafting this wasn't Hunter influenced, it was uninfluenced. Hunter Exalt after you're otherwise done, and there's 4 mods that you can get on a prefix. There's % life, which is good, % chaos damage, which is good, and then 2 flask related ones that we don't really care about, but they're much more rare. The chance to hit either life or the chaos damage is like, I think, close to like 80% chance. Like you're very likely to hit one of those 2, and they're both really good. So you just throw one on as you're done, or either bonus damage or bonus health. Pretty straightforward. And then this ring, this is my strength ring. Same idea. Use the catalysts, strength essence, or... Well, yeah, you have to strength essence because you can't resist essence on rings. You can use resist essences on belt and just hope you hit strength, which is definitely less cost effective, but if you're on like solo self-found and you just run out of strength essences, something to keep in mind. The ring has to be strength essences for crafting it, because basically essences on rings are kind of whack and a lot of them aren't good. And you're looking for good life roll, and either, again, probably 2 solid suffixes or 1 good suffix and an open suffix. Just keeping in mind that for this Bane build, you need at least one of them with an open prefix, one of your rings, that is, for the minus mana cost. So mine, I happen to hit a really, really solid ring with 2 good resists and the open prefix. And then likewise to the belt, after it was done, just got a Crusader Exalt. Crusader Exalt has percent spell damage and also percent ES, which are both pretty solid. I was hoping for the spell damage, but they're both solid prefixes that you can hit. You're slightly less likely on this one. I think maybe this might be like 50% or slightly under 50% of actually hitting one of those two. But the only other option really, if you have an open prefix, is like a regular Exalt and hoping you hit flat ES or mana or maybe evasion, which the chances of hitting any of those isn't exactly good either. So I went for the chance to like get some spell damage and ended up with some percent ES, which is good. Other ring covers one of the other stats that the build needs, which is a mana regen roll. If you end up with a mana regen roll on this ring, that's good too. That covers you. You could get a mana regen roll on your shield, which mine has, but I don't actually need this one. Or you can get it on the other ring. You need a mana regen roll somewhere for this character. And the ring's a pretty good spot for it because, like I said, there's not that many good essences for rings, but Essence of Misery is a guaranteed mana regen roll. So, kind of like how I did with the strength one, I just spammed these until I got a good life roll. I think this one's actually tier 2, not tier 1, but it's still good. Good life roll, good resist, well, decent resist, and then an open suffix for a craft. And yeah, pretty straightforward. This one's, again, if I had happened to hit strength, then I wouldn't need the strength ring. If I had happened to hit a 3rd resist affix and had an open prefix, I could have used this one for the minus cost craft. But just need mana regen somewhere. So I went for that on that one. And then that leaves us with just the shield and the weapon. So we'll go for shield first. Goal on the shield, the big thing on the shield is the +3 max fire res. And it's kind of annoying to roll for because it's not something you can like force with essences or anything like that. What I would recommend is just, I had a bunch of fossilized spirit shields. You can use spiked shields as well. They're much better earlier on before you're like super min-maxing to help you top off your spell suppression. And I was using one for a little while, but I just had a bunch of fossilized shields in my stash, and anytime I found a harvest, especially harvest fire reforges, just threw the shields at it and just was fishing for that +3 max res. And what you're kind of looking for is +3 fire res with, most likely just with decent suffixes. So in this one's case, it has an all res roll, which is really solid, and it has a mana regen roll, which is good, but I already had this ring with mana regen, so it's kind of overkill for me. I like to tell myself that if I get an accelerating shrine, the 2nd mana regen roll is actually doing something. But otherwise, it's just some suffixes. The big thing is the +3 max fire, and it's a pain to get, so do what you gotta do. Alternatively, you can use fossils. I got essences on the brain, but scorched fossils, and then I don't know what else you would use, but if you have resonators or you want to buy resonators and do fossils and not have to like slowly farm for harvests, you could try it that way. But this is another one where get the suffixes done, and then what you can do, if you are on a spirit shield, rather. If you are on a spirit shield, if you're not on a spirit shield, if you're using a spike shield, and you got one that had good suffixes but not good prefixes, I would just say like benchcraft life and call it a day. If you're on a spirit shield and you have good suffixes, you can benchcraft suffix can't be changed, and you can use a chaos reforge from harvest, and it will guarantee you +1 chaos spells. That's the only chaos related prefix. And from there, if like mine hit only that prefix, it didn't add any other prefixes. What I did was bench crafted life and got another Hunter Exalt, which Hunter Exalts on shields this league can literally only give you percent life. There are no other Hunter prefixes for shields. That's where all those max res ones used to be, which are now just a natural shield suffix thing. The only Hunter shield prefix is percent life, which is awesome. Guaranteed percent life Hunter Exalt. I got tier 2, didn't get tier 1, so mine's only 6% instead of a fancy 10%. But it was guaranteed, so that's really good. And realistically, that kind of covers everything, because wand, honestly, if you can help it at all, I would recommend just buying a wand. You can maybe buy like a partway finished wand if you're on trade. If you're on SSF, obviously you have to craft. I'll cover that. But you specifically need +1 all spells for this build to get the extra +1 level for Purity of Fire to get it up to 23. You have +1 on the wand and +1 on the amulet, and then a 21 gem. And just in general, crafting for +1 all spells is annoying. But if you really have to do it, you can alt spam. You can harvest caster reforge spam. You could use Essences of Woe and just pray that you hit a jackpot of all spells alongside it. I guess you could use cast speed essences. I've actually really liked cast speed on this build, even though it's not the most efficient for damage. It is nice for speed. Yeah, you're really just looking for that +1 all spells. And then if you were like alteration spamming, you could try to go for an imprint regal and then just try to get a multi-mod going with dot multi and spell damage. Pretty much you just want the all spells, you want some dot multi and whatever other damage or cast speed you can get. One thing is, as far as I'm aware, like with shields, the only chaos prefix on wands right now, if they're not influenced, and if the wand is item level 82 or lower, or 81 or lower, I believe 82. You have to be low enough eye level that you can't roll the flat chaos for attacks. If you're low enough item level, the only chaos prefix is +1 chaos. So, in theory, if you got a +1 all spells wand with an open prefix, and no open suffixes, because if there's an open suffix, you'll probably just hit a suffix, so you would try to finish the suffixes first in one way or another. And you can get your hands on an augment chaos craft from Harvest. You can guarantee getting +1 chaos, so then you could have a +1 all spells and +1 chaos for a +2 wand, which is very, very strong. Just getting those +1, or not those +1, getting those augment crafts is very rare. They're extremely rare, but if you can get one, that option exists, and that's a good way to get a really good wand. And then especially if you could get like 3 good prefixes just in general, and then potentially work on the suffixes with reforge key prefix type stuff, or you could even lock prefix and chaos reforge to pray for like a super min-maxed wand. That's probably how you would do it. But again, I bought this wand. I think I ended up using a Leo slam and slammed on the spell crit. So like this actually is a kind of disgusting wand for not this build. It's good for this build, but it has stats that I'm not even using. But it's just, I want it for the +1, the little bit of spell damage and the cast speed and the dot multi. It's strong. But yeah. Crafting wands kind of stinks. Buy if you can. Otherwise, that's how you would do it. That's how I would have done it if I had to. And with that, that covers everything. That's all of the gear that I am using on this character. That I have crafted on this character or attempted to craft on this character. Obviously, a lot of these strategies can be used on, other builds. Some of the specific stuff like needing +2 max fire res or +3 fire res are specific to this character, but a lot of these kind of just work in general for anything that's trying to roll suppression gear for the most part. And yeah, hope it's helpful. Hope this is of use, and I will have a paste bin link in the description that kind of outlines all of these methods as well, just in text form. So if you want that, it'll be there. And that's it. Thanks for watching. See ya.